Hi, friends. Dr. Delphina JOYce, Messenger of Joy, CEO of Joy Journey Options You Choose. We are so grateful today that we are going to be discussing curiosity in conflict. And boy, you are in for a treat because this workshop is designed to empower you with effective conflict resolution skills and foster greater connection. I also want to share that we have a very special guest today. And before we dive into that, let's remember that Joy Journey Options You Choose and Dr. Delphina JOYce, as well as our featured guest, Eric McGregor, that we are here to provide educational, informational information. We do not diagnose nor prescribe any prescription. And if you need any medical advice, please consult your healthcare professional. Let's dive into this awesome experience that we have for you today. You are going to be in for a treat with Mr. Eric McGregor. Eric, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi. My name is Eric McGregor, and I am a mental fitness coach, and I specialize in relationships, resilience, and performance, specifically in those order. And it is the practice of self-mastery.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. And as you all know, I'm Dr. Delphina JOYce, Messenger of Joy. I have a mind and body wellness practitioner, as well as a doctorate degree in educational leadership. Today, our goal is to provide you with knowledge, skills, strategies, and tools. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the importance of creating information and understanding before actually acting, and what are some specific biases that can come into play when we are in the midst of conflict. We're also going to be looking at the blameless uh,
Autopsy. I'll help you
Thank
out.
you. Thank you. Obviously, I don't want to hear about death and breaking
No.
it up. That must be a challenge for me. And we're going to dive into curiosity first strategies, and you're going to have an opportunity to learn about surface positions and underlying aspirations. Eric is an expert in the house when it comes to this. We're always diving in through the joy mindset. This is journey options you choose. And we want you to walk away with confidence. That is rise with confianza. So we promise that when this joy workshop comes to a complete, that you will have acquired resources and methods to implement wellness first, your key to healthy living. Why are we here? Well, how many of you experience conflict? Everyone. Do you often feel overwhelmed or stressed when you're dealing with other people, when you have things that you just don't agree with? Well, a lot of people do. In fact, I would venture to say everyone does. Why? Because you're not alone. You're not alone. When you're dealing with other humans, we have challenges. That's why we're here. We're here to help equip you with practical tools and insights to embrace joy and rise with confidence. We would like you to move beyond assumptions, to uncover deeper truths through thoughtful investigation and genuine inquiry. And that is what Eric is going to be talking to you about. So before we dive in, let's talk about this. Type in the chat, my friends. Thank you. Welcome. And we appreciate you investing in yourself. Why must we avoid from acting before gathering sufficient information? Eric, what's your thoughts on this?
This one's pretty easy. If we don't have the proper information, we're making assumptions. And we waste a lot of time, a lot of performance, a lot of energy, and a lot of relationship points on solving a problem and not the problem. So the more we look around, the more we explore, the more we understand the problem that we're actually solving for, the better our relationships are, the more time we save, the less stress we have, the more conflicts we have, the less conflicts we have in the future.
Yeah, totally agree when you say the problem. What's the root? What's the core? So let's talk about understanding decision biases. What are decision biases? Can you talk to us about this?
Decision biases come in many forms, and you'll see some of those on the slides coming up. Things like confirmation bias, things that we already believe to be true, or things that we have in our knowledge base that lead us to solving problems before we have the requisite amount of information. And we're all guilty of that, whether it's a subject that we think that we know, that we don't have enough information or updated information on, or a person that we think that we know because we've known them forever. So we assume we know what they're thinking and what they're going to do and what their positions are and what their intentions are. But oftentimes that's where conflict comes from, is those assumptions are the root of everything that gets us in trouble.
Yeah, when I think about it myself, like basically I come with some ideas in my head and they're already operating in the background. They're already moving forward. And so when I see an experience or I'm having a conflict, I'm automatically going to go to that record, if you will, because it's already playing. So recognizing biases is the first step towards achieving clarity and improving your conflict resolution skills. Why? Because if you don't know what your personal biases are when you're making a decision, you'll fall in the trap of that judgment, like Eric talked about. So, Eric, what is a confirmation bias?
Confirmation bias is taking the things that you already think you know and applying them into the current situation. And from an evolutionary standpoint, that makes a lot of sense. If we were constantly taking in all the information from our environment and trying to make decisions as though everything was new, we'd never get anything done and we'd be cognitively overloaded and we wouldn't have energy for anything else. So we store this information in and then we use our best predictive judgment based on what we already know. That works well for us a lot of times, but
Mhm.
not in interpersonal conflict.
Yeah, because we're moving from our point of view only. Okay, friends, here is a question for you. Type in the chat. Has confirmation bias affected your ability to see the other side's perspective during a disagreement? Yes or no? Yeah, lots of yeses. For me, for sure. For me, for sure. I'm going on what I think is right, and I always think what I have to say is right. What about an anchoring bias? What is this? I think about a ship and I think about something that's holding it down. What's an anchoring bias, Eric?
Yeah, something that holds you back, something that's in the past, something that's keeping you where you've been. We all know the saying that, this person doesn't change, or they're just stuck in the past, or they're using outdated information. Science updates, we update, we evolve, everything updates, but our ideas can get anchored, our beliefs can get anchored, and our judgments can get anchored. And if we don't pull that anchor, then we're stuck on unupdated information. You update your phone, you update your computer, you update your car, update your brain.
Yeah, this is making me think about an individual that, they always say no. So why bother? They're going to say no anyways, right? So, given an anchor bias, what specific action helps pause and proactively gather unbiased information before making a critical judgment in a conflict? What does this mean?
In these cases, it's important to maybe put yourself in the other person, or at least understand that if you were on the other side of it, that you wouldn't want someone to not listen to what you were saying in the current and to assume the things that happened in the past, or to assume the things that happened in their past were exactly what was happening now. So in the event that this happens to you, which it will, which it always does, and you're going to be on both sides of this, having a fresh look and trying not to assume is always going to be better than thinking you know where someone's intentions come from. And we all have this, we all have this happen. Just little things like asking if you put the pan away, or someone pointing out that you have two different socks on. We would get irritated and assume that that person might
Mhm.
have ill intentions. But when we stopped and paused and pulled that anchor up, we would realize, no, that person's just trying to help us out. Yeah, we don't want the pan on fire when we're gone. They're not
Mhm.
coming down on us. They just want to make sure that this was done. Or, hey, you're a little mismatch there. It's not because they're trying to tell you that you're a bad person or that you made stupid decisions. They're really trying to help you out.
Yeah, so last time we had our joy workshop, we talked about empathy and putting yourself in that person's position to understand. So a way to pause could be just take a breath and attempt to be empathetic in the situation. What is a fundamental attribution error when it comes to biases and conflict?
A little bit about what we just talked about before is the fact that we don't know where someone's coming from unless we ask. Hey, I like to do something where I say, the story that I'm telling myself here is that you're irritated with me because of X, Y, and Z. And then allowing the person to say, that's not the case. I'm actually not irritated at all. And I'm just trying to make sure that the pan wasn't left on the stove and the house doesn't catch on fire. And then I have to be secure enough in myself and in the other person to go, you know what? I assumed that they had bad intentions and that they were coming down on me when in fact I was wrong.
hmm hmm Yeah, this makes me think about when it says, like, in conflict, we assume others act from bad intentions while our actions are justified by the situation. So I'm thinking about conflict and maybe someone asking me, like, where were you? Right. And if my natural response is, you're always trying to control me. Why do you always need to know everything, or something to that effect. The first impression was an idea of control. But like what you were talking about, Eric, is what about if we're willing to pause, take a moment, and put ourselves in a position of empathy and understanding where that person is coming from? And perhaps that person was worried or concerned, and has nothing to do with control. It has to do with worry and concern, and having a positive presupposition of what that person was thinking and where they were coming from. It's not assuming anything, but it is about pausing and taking a moment to gather information, because we can operate on our first responses, which can be um, information playing in the background that's old, or a natural judgment, things like that. So these biases, being aware of what they are, can be very powerful, because then we can understand where we might be operating from and how our biases could be showing up. This is one of my favorite, the assumption bias. And you said this throughout each of the other biases, where we think we know someone well. We think we know who they are, and we're not taking into consideration that people change. Situations evolve, and you use the phone about, like, we update our phone, we update all kinds of different things. What would you like to share about this, Eric?
Well, you said something that's really important in all of this, and part of the mental fitness framework when we work towards self mastery in the system and the program that I run is the judge. The judge is going to come in every time. That's your autopilot. Your autopilot is take the information that you think you know and that you have in the past and run with it. And you are almost always on autopilot going to run a judgment of yourself, a judgment of others, a judgment of circumstances. And then you'll bring in other saboteurs, which we don't have time to get into here. But there are a number of things that may, if you're a hypervigilant person, you may be worried about things all the time. So now you're going to bring that in. If you're a controller, you're going to try and control the situation. So the assumption bias is going to stack all those on, and generally we're an autopilot because that's the cheapest cognitive way to roll through life. So the point of all this is to break that autopilot, recognize those patterns, why we're getting into conflict, break that autopilot, and say, what am I assuming here? What more is there to know about the situation? What assumptions am I making about the person, the circumstance, or myself?
Yeah, I like that. It's almost like I want a card that says, what assumptions are I making about myself, others? I want to do like a little card. Maybe we can add that as part of the free gift. I like that. Thank you, Eric. Given biases, what might be the value of a blameless mindset? Put it in the chat, friends. Eric, your thoughts?
This one almost comes back and almost rhymes with and almost goes synonymous with the beginner's mindset is tabula rasa, no preconceived notions. Forget that you know everything. When you're
Because you
entering a
don't.
situation, yeah, you really don't, because so much has changed. So for this, the blameless mindset is, look, we're trying to figure stuff out. We're trying to solve problems, and in order to solve problems, sometimes the person in the room who has no idea anything about anything is the person that can see it clearly, because they are not led in the wrong direction. They don't have the preconceived notions. So a blameless mindset just means, you know what, we have an issue here, and regardless of blame, we both want to solve the problems. And we'll talk a little bit more about position and aspiration later. But how are we going to get there if we're blaming each other? Because as soon as we blame each other, our mirror neurons kick in, and you're going to come after me and I'm going to come after you. And then we don't solve a problem or the problem.
Yeah, the problem. The defensiveness. Breakthrough moments come from discovering something we never expected about a familiar situation or person. And when you're talking, Eric, all I can think about is this idea of, like, wait, am I undermining my intuition? And I wonder where the intersection of empathy falls into when our intuition, because we wouldn't want to undermine some of our guiding systems either. And how do they intersect? Just a thought, a sidebar, a sidebar. We're going to dive into blameless. I don't want to say the word
Autopsy.
autopsy.
And
Blameless
this is
autopsy.
honestly an important word to say because it is supposed to be shock value. We are looking at the body on the table,
Mhm.
and we are not giving any assumptions as to what happened here. Because if we do, we might blame someone for murder that it's not. And so this is intentionally provocative in its language.
Yeah. So what is a blameless autopsy?
This is where you and someone else, or a group of people, or a business institution, organization, would have made a mistake, or there may be conflict. And in that conflict, we want to come to a resolution. We want to find a way through. We want to figure out how it is that we got here.
Mhm.
And we know that if we're blaming leadership, or we're blaming management, or we're blaming the workers, or we're blaming our spouse, or we're blaming our children, or we're using any blame at all, that exploration is not going to go far. So now we have everything out on the table, and we are going to look and find what the root cause is and not just find the superficial wounds. We're going to find out what the root cause is, where it started, and what is the root behind it so that we can solve the actual problem and not just the first injury that we come to without blame and without judgment.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to do a moment of live here for our friends. So we are talking about blameless autopsy, which
You did
is
it.
blameless autopsy. And we're talking about how when we are in the middle of conflict, the importance of not jumping to conclusion and not assuming anything, that you're literally taking a moment to learn rather than punishing, because we're talking specifically about conflict. And when we move into you, me space, it's not a win-win. It's me or you. There's no us involved. And so let's look at what is the blameless uh,
Autopsy. It's just jumping from on.
blameless autopsy method. It creates psychological safety where people can share openly, knowing they won't be attacked for their contributions. How is that? What? I don't get it. Like, why? How does that happen?
Well, you can imagine a situation where you're in a fight with someone or there's conflict with someone. Let's say it's a significant other or your family, or you've walked into a boardroom and the business is having, why did we lose this client? Why didn't this project go well?
Mhm.
No one wants to put up their hand. No one wants to be whack-a-mole. And if you curtail the fact that you are to blame, then all of a sudden we can expose what it is that there is to blame. And we're going to find out later through these series that blame doesn't do any good. That's done in the past. Now, if something happens too many times, it may be time to get rid of someone or to change the situation. But when we're trying to actually figure out what the conflict is about or how to solve the problem, the more people are open and able to be vulnerable, the easier it is going to be to suss out what the actual problem is. Because when you're in a marriage or you're a family or you're with friends or you're in a business institution, the most important thing, and we'll talk about this and navigate down the road, the most important thing is to remember what your purpose is. Why are we here? What's going to matter in the long run? What's going to matter in the long run is that we identify what the problem is. And the gift and opportunity in there is that if we can figure out what the problem is and solve for it, we're not going to make this mistake again, and we might avoid an even more costly mistake down the road. So in order to do that, people cannot feel like they're going to be ostracized or blamed. Yes, we're going to find out what the problem is. Yes, you may be a part of it, but this is for learning. And if you're good, we're going to keep you around, and this is going to be an opportunity for you to be even better, for us to be even better.
Yeah, you addressed the importance of culture. And when difficulties, conflict, things like that happen, if we have a conflict that is you against me, then people are afraid. And fear, when we can remove fear from the conflict, meaning I can holistically be who I am, even if I'm the one who made the error or I was wrong, but I can feel safe in my communication. I can say, you know what, I dropped the ball, I screwed up, I'm sorry, I totally forgot to email that client and remind them, and they're angry now because of A, B, or C, right? If I feel like I'm safe in the situation and I don't have the fear of termination or the fear of, oh, people are going to speak ill-mannered of me and all these things, then the idea of constructive conflict can come into play as opposed to destructive conflict. So when fear is removed from the equation, the truth emerges more readily. So when people feel safe, and that is a strategy of using the blameless autopsy method where people can feel safe to handle conflict.
Exactly.
Let's look at this. These are the four enemies of understanding. What do they have to do with conflict?
The first one is judgment, even though it's at the bottom right. The first thing that comes in is judgment. And we're going to judge ourselves. We're going to judge others. We're going to judge circumstances. You know what? If this person wouldn't have done that, it would have turned out all right. If I hadn't done this, everything would have been okay. If the situation was different, this wouldn't have happened. And then that goes towards blame and towards fear. There's two powers that drive us. Either the fear of failure or being judged or not doing something, or the love of overcoming the obstacle, of creating, of, in this case, exploring. And when you're fearful of something, you're much more likely to do the bottom left one, to avoid it. If
Mhm.
you love something, you're not going to avoid it. You're gonna rush to embrace it. So we are trying to reframe this through the blameless autopsy, through blamelessness, to turn any sort of setback or any sort of being wrong into an opportunity.
Yeah, so these four enemies of understanding, I could certainly move judgment to the top there and move it around because everybody's operating in their own mindset. And so these are the four enemies of understanding. If we blame someone, we're not going to understand the situation. We can't stand in an empathetic place. And if we don't want to confront the situation, we're avoiding it and running away. If judgment comes into play, we can't see anything because we're already operating on what we believe to be true. So these are four things to be aware of. We talked about biases, and now we're talking about enemies to understanding because these are things that come into play during conflict that can interrupt and trap us from actually resolving conflict in a positive and healthy way. So these are the steps for the blameless.
Autopsy.
I feel like I should have a body up there.
Yeah, it is Halloween almost. Just less than a
And
month for Halloween.
you start with a timeline, gathering facts, what happened, when, where, why, how, those things. What were those factors? And you're looking at facts only. You're going to remove the judgments. Oh, because she's always late. That's why she ran the red light. She didn't want to get. And you're also moving to the contributing factors where there's some systemic things. What are the things that could have contributed to this situation? You're looking at learnings. What's the insight without blame? That is the key aspect. And then you're moving into next steps. Anything you want to share about this?
I think that wraps it up pretty good. I know we've been behind on time before, so we're not going to linger on every. For those of you who've joined us before, you know that we run long. So anything that doesn't need explaining, I think we're probably just going to cruise right through.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's look at curiosity first strategies. What are curiosity first strategies?
Well, first of all, is be curious. I mean, that's it. Empathy really opens the door to being curious, and we talked about it in part 1A and B of our workshop before. Is understanding that people are different, and understanding that understanding them allows you to be curious. And it doesn't mean you have to agree. It doesn't mean you have to condone. It doesn't mean you have to accept. However, that empathy is going to open the door to go, What am I missing about this? You and I, we don't see this the same. Isn't that curious? And that's really where it leads to, is not wanting to argue that your idea is better or their idea is worse, or you are right and they are wrong. That doesn't feel good. But understanding, and we don't understand anything at all until we explore it. You don't understand the woods until you explore it. You don't understand a new car until you explore it. You don't understand the dynamics of relationships until you explore them. So exploration is just really getting out there, being curious, and through the love of, and this is something you can't fake, through the love of wanting to know more. Isn't
Mhm.
it interesting that we disagree? Tell me more about it so I can understand.
Yeah, I like that. And these are three items that can fall into play, three strategies, if you will, that can fall into play for curiosity. Sometimes we don't know. How can we be curious? Well, if you ask open-ended questions, meaning there's not a right or a wrong, it's just, so tell me about this. I'm wondering. And there isn't a hidden agenda. That's what's really important about open-ended questions. You don't know the answer. You're actually seeking to understand. And you recognize that there's multiple angles, there's different things that can be happening from different perspectives. And you're looking, it's like you're an investigator. That's why you're curious, because you're looking for hidden factors. Why is this important? This is important because it's beyond surface positions. What people initially present as their position in a conflict is often just the tip of the iceberg. And you can see this iceberg right here. Beneath the surface position lie deeper aspirations, needs, concerns that drive behavior. True resolution happens when we understand, and that's what Eric has talked about, when we understand not just what people are asking for, but why they're asking for it. This is one of the keys to conflict, is that curiosity. Eric, what is a position and an aspiration? What does this have to do with conflict and why is it important?
First, I want to back up just a hair in terms of the exploration. Have you ever heard the parable of the blind men and the elephant?
Tell us about it.
So this one's a nice one because once you know it, you can always cheat back and just say, "Have you explored the whole elephant?" Well, there's blind men who walk up to an elephant, and one of them grabs the trunk and says, "Man, this is a big giant snake." The judge has convinced him that it is a snake, and another one grabs the leg and says, "No, no, this is a tree." Convinced that it's a tree. Another one pushes up against the rib cage and says, "No, this is an immovable wall." And the last one has a hold of the tail and says, "Nope, this is obviously a rope." Well, you step back and you see that the elephant is many things. And depending on where your position is, you're convinced that it is a snake or a tree or a wall or a rope. But given the sight, those blind people could step back and take a look and see that the elephant is way more complex than that. And that's how it is that we run into a lot of situations, is that we grab a hold of the leg or the tail or the nose or push against the ribs. And we are absolutely convinced of what it is without stepping back and going, "Oh, there's way more to this. This is a far more complex beast." So that's where we get into the positional points. The positional point is that the snout is a snake. The positional point is that you are wrong and I am right. We will go here and not go there. An aspirational point digs below that. And an aspiration, it's important to understand, is something that you would want for that other person too. It may be a longing to be accepted. It may be wanting safety. It may be any number of things that you would want for that person too. So on a positional level, you may disagree with them. Why is it that you work so much? Well, I work so much because you need the money. Well, we need the money for the family. Well, on the aspirational level is, well, you would want us to be well taken care of and for us to have safety. And so that's the aspirational level, is the safety and the security of things that come in with working too much. Now, on the other end, the person would also agree that, what, I would want you to be there for the family as well. Yeah, family safety and all that's important too, but what, so is spending time with the family. So once you get down below that positional and into the aspirational, now you can find where those two seemingly disagreement things align. Yes, we would like to be safe, and yes, we would like to be there and with the family. Now, how do we reframe the positions, knowing what the actual aspirations are, so that we can realign those positions, so that everyone wins? or at least are better understood.
Yeah. What is the actual real need? Now, this is an example. Thank you, Eric, for giving us that idea of working hard and what was the aspiration? The aspiration is that they want the family to have their needs met. And how does each position fall into alignment with that? Here's an example of the office temperature war. Has anybody ever been in an office temperature war where you're like, it's too hot, or you're like, oh, I'm freezing? So I had this experience happen, shared an Airbnb with some family. And I really like to sleep when at a temperature that's about maybe 72-ish. And this other individual was freezing and wanted it to be at 78 or 80. And that just wouldn't work for me. So when we look at that, the position is that each individual wants the thermostat to be at a specific number. And it almost seems non-negotiable. I wanted it to be at, 72, and this individual wanted it at 78 or 80. But the aspiration is more like this. We both wanted to be comfortable to sleep peacefully. That was our aspiration. I didn't want to be hot. I wanted to sleep peacefully. And this individual didn't want to be cold and wanted to sleep peacefully. That was the aspiration. And the aspiration was the same, even though our positioning was different. So when we explore aspirations, solutions can emerge. And so what ended up happening was this individual had additional blankets because this individual needed to feel warm. And I had a fan because I needed to feel cooler. And so we had different arrangements for each of us, and we honored and acknowledged that we both wanted the same thing, to feel peaceful and comfortable in our rest. Any thoughts, Eric?
No, perfect.
So that's the difference between aspirations and positions. Aspirations are a win-win outcome. Why? Because they help individuals to feel respected. They help the team members to be productive and the organization to succeed. At the end, it's about us. It's about what is it that we really want. And our aspirations could actually be the same. It's our positioning that creates the conflict. Eric?
Oftentimes they are the same. Oftentimes they are the same. You see it a lot with children. Hey, what are you guys really fighting about? Well, it turns out they will both want to do basically the same thing, but just in a slightly different variant of way. So you see it everywhere. Once you look for it, you will see it everywhere. Dig down, find the aspiration, explore.
Yeah, thank you. So far what we've done is we've talked about biases. And then after biases, we talked about things that can get in the way of understanding. We've given some solutions. And then we dove into curiosity when it comes to conflict and how curiosity can support conflict and the resolution of conflict. And now we're going to dive into questions that open doors. And we just completed the idea of the difference between position and aspiration, and why it's so important to understand what is the core aspiration for each individual. Because if we can understand what the aspiration is, we can open doors to resolution. And why are opening doors important? Eric?
We all want our needs met. We all want to feel validated. We all want to feel safe. We all want to feel valued, honored. We all want to feel like we're contributing. We all want to feel useful and to be heard and to be loved and understood. And if you're just constantly at war and you're having to give up and it's only win-lose, then always someone is losing, as opposed to we're in this journey together. And maybe sometimes we go left and maybe sometimes we go right. But our guiding light that's out in front of us, we're continuously navigating towards the north. And so during the journey, it is important to ask some of these questions that are shown below. What is important here? What does it look like for success for everyone? Why are we fighting about the same things? Because we haven't talked about what's really bothering us yet. It's important to understand how you view the situation with all people. Anytime we go on vacation or anytime that there is a day together that we're with the family, I always ask, hey, what does your vision of today look like? What does your version and vision of today look like? Because mine's going to be different. And once the family aligns their vision and version, now I'm not thrown off by, oh, I thought we were going to go here for lunch, or I thought we were going to do this. And they're not thrown off by, oh man, I can't wait to get ice cream. And now they're constantly irritated because they want to go to the ice cream shop. And then, the wife might be, oh, we wanted to go to the beach. Well, we can do all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And we can also have an understanding of what we're going to do if we align what the day looks like, what the vacation looks like, if we set expectations, if we find out what's important for everyone, if we know what success looks like for everyone, if we understand the situation on how everyone sees it, and we talk about it so that there aren't surprises. Doesn't mean there's not going to be conflict on the way, but I assure you that when you have an understanding of what the roadmap looks like, there's going to be a whole heck of a lot less.
Yeah, I'm thinking about what haven't we talked about yet? And when conflict is a heated conflict, sometimes going to that deep level of what would this look like for you? What do you really need? And it's honing into those aspirations again. It's getting past the service level of you didn't do what I asked you to do, or I didn't do what you asked me to do, or something like that. It's diving even deeper of what's happening. Here's some common barriers to curiosity: the assumption trap, which we talked about in biases. Time pressure. We don't have enough time to talk about this. Like, let's just get a solution and be done with it. Like, we don't have time to be all touchy-feely about this. We got things to do. And the emotional reactivity, like, I can't stand that we have to talk about all these things. Can't you just do it right? It's that emotional reactivity. Any thoughts on this, Eric, when it comes to conflict?
I think we all know what all these are. We all see them. We all live them. We see them in ourselves and others. We could spend an entire episode on this, but I think these pretty well speak for themselves.
Yeah. So here's some ways to know that you're succeeding in your conflict. If you're getting to aspirations, you have those aha moments where you understand what a person is saying. You have a physical relaxed position, your shoulders may be down, and you begin to bridge some conversation starters. You're actually diving in to see where that person is going through. If you can see yourself when you have these kinds of challenges and you're working through them, then you know that you're moving in a positive position. So I am going to move this into some exploration mistakes. We talked about faking it. There's not faking about it. And analysis of paralysis, like when you're trying to explore something, if you move into a space where you're unwilling to explore, you're not going to get anything out of it. And then the one-way street where your way is the only way. Anything you want to add to this, Eric?
The analysis by paralysis, and that's why the exploration is so key and important, is because there are always so many paths that could be taken, and until you really lay the map out, and until you really flesh it out with a blameless autopsy, and you have that empathy and that exploration, you're going to start going in directions that are unproductive. They're going to be dead ends. They're going to be, stuck in the mud and all that stuff. So that paralysis by analysis can really be winnowed down,
Mhm.
and you can trim off a lot of branches of the tree and really come to just a few paths that you can take. They're going to be most productive and save so much time and irritation and stress and energy in the long run. And that's interpersonal, that's familial, and that is in business organizations.
Thank you. Here's some tools that we can use when we're working with conflict that can specifically support us. We talked about some of the challenges, your biases, fears, assumptions, things like that, and how they can, there are certain operating systems that are going through in your mind. And if you can be aware of those, you can counteract them and choose differently. And we're encouraging you to dive really deep to aspirations. What does that mean? Here's how you build your curiosity muscle. Well, you can't see my muscle there, but boom, there it is. You practice this daily. Whenever you're getting into any kind of disagreement, you actually are looking at what are my assumptions here? Wait a minute. Am I in the middle of a blameless autopsy, or am I making some judgments here and saying, oh, that person was, and you also are reflecting regularly. How do you build your muscle, Eric?
Repetition. It's the only way. You stack the weight and you do the repetition. I love this slide so much that we could spend forever here, but we won't. The daily practice, every day, every day. If you have kids or you're around kids, they ask why all the time. And it'll drive you crazy because usually you don't have the answer as to why. Well, why are we doing that? Well, because I said so. No, no, like be curious. You know what? How many times I say to my kids now, like, I, I don't know. Why are we doing it that way? Let's explore this some more. Because I assume that we're just doing it that way for a reason. It leads into number two. We just assumed, and that gets us into trouble. It prevents us from finding better ways. So just the daily practice of doing it, putting in the repetitions, and then the reflecting. Like all three of these are such key points because when you reflect, it allows the other party to go, yeah, you got that right, nailed it, or you missed a little bit there. What you heard and what I said, they're misaligned. So I'm going to provide the opportunity now to correct either for myself or the other person can correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for highlighting those three. And then this is where we dove in. And I hope that if there's anything else you want to say about aspirations and positions, that you utilize this opportunity. So there's some key takeaways to being an explorer. And you can see this person in the background. There's a mountain there, but some key components of being an explorer, because you want to be curious. Those are strategies. Be curious when you're dealing with conflict. One of those things is to slow down. You slow down to get to the root and the core as opposed to jumping to conclusions and trying to get it done like this minute. You are creating a blameless space. Meaning no one is to blame. Let's dive in. Let's see what's going on here. And you dig for aspirations. That is where's our core? What in this conflict and the individuals that are involved in the conflict, where is our commonality? What are we both really looking for? Eric?
Slow down, lengthen the fuse, time between action, between thought and action. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Dig for aspirations. Be a curious explorer. If you don't slow down, you're going to dig through the stuff that was important. You're going to smash those pots. You're going to destroy those bones. Slow down. Be curious.
Thank you. Thank you. So, friends, it's 11:51. We came together and our session objectives were to provide you with knowledge, skill, strategy, and tool. The knowledge that we provided is about the importance of acting, the importance of understanding acting before gathering information. If you act too soon without actually investigating and being curious, that can cause greater challenge. And then it's important to recognize your own common decisions, your biases, your judgments, the things that are operating in the background. What are they? We also looked at the skill of developing the method of blameless autonomy, autopsy, autopsy, blameless autopsy, where you're investigating. I think I just keep seeing a body when I was in high school, or I had, they had like the cadaver when I was in college, and I just keep seeing these things, and I'm like, I don't want to say this word, but it's important when we're talking about conflict. Blameless autonomy, autopsy. Blameless autopsy is so important because we're investigating, we're digging in, we're being curious about the situation and all the aspects so that we can get to the core. What is the aspiration between the individual and all of the challenge, if you will? And the way you get there is you look at the timeline, the facts, the contributing factors, your learnings, and your next steps. And then we dug into curiosity first strategies. What are they? Asking open-ended questions. Can you remember any of them, Eric?
How? What? To a lesser extent, why? Because it's sort of a trigger, but
Yes.
just not closed-ended questions that are going to have people say yes, no. How did help me understand what got you here?
Yeah.
How is it that we move forward? How are you feeling? What else is there that I'm missing?
Mhm.
What about this am I not understanding?
Yeah. Thank you. And the tool was the specific blameless aut auto oh my goodness, I'm gonna change this.
Autopsy.
Autopsy, and how it looks at surface positions and underlying aspirations. So thank you for your time. Thank you for investing in yourself. Joy Journey Options You Choose and Eric McGregor has a gift for you. Our gift for you as you are moving through conflict is to find your joy. Remember, your mindset, the quality of your mindset, and we talked about the blameless mindset, but specifically the joy mindset. Whatever is happening in your mind, those operating systems, those thoughts, those beliefs, those things that are anchoring you, they have an impact on your health. And so, if you can embrace the joy journey options you choose mindset, you can look at things differently because you're empowered and you have power. So, we have for you the Joy Workshop Toolkit. This is a toolkit to give you practical strategies, techniques, and exercises to help you with conflict. So we have something called the reaction to reflection, leading with curiosity. It's about understanding, developing, applying, and using. And that is you identify one situation, one issue that is really costing you your sleep. And then you're going to go through the blameless
Autopsy.
autopsy, and you're going to explore causes without fear, blame, or judgment. And the idea is to learn, not punish. And you have an outline of what that looks like. There are 5 steps on that. And it dives in deeply of what does this mean? What is the timeline? What are the facts? No blaming. What are some of the factors that contributed to it? What are your learnings? What did you get out of this? Based on this information that you've gained, what do you know now? And then what is your next step? One small shift that starts to change. Who owns it, who's going to do it, and how are we going to move into a different position. And if we can replace who's at fault, meaning removing that blame, with what can we learn is so important. Eric, this makes me think about the situation, and they're building in this background. But I moved into a position, and in this new position, some of my predecessors had forgotten to file some very important paperwork. And in that forgetfulness, there were some ramifications to not filing very important paperwork. And when I moved into this executive leadership role, my goal was not to define who fell short and didn't do their job. My goal was to understand what had happened. And really, what it came down to was the importance of onboarding, the importance of helping people to understand the roles that they're in and the responsibilities that fall in those roles. Because in a deeper dive, the reality came out that people didn't understand that they were supposed to be doing specific things. They hadn't even looked at job descriptions or things like that. So that's why it's so important to understand it's not necessarily about who's at fault, but what can we learn? How can we grow and how can we get better at this? Any thoughts you want to add, Eric?
We talked about it before. You can't do better last time, but you can do
Mhm.
better next time. And this is about growing. This is why I stay with my folks for a minimum of 12 weeks. This is why we talk about building the muscle, mental fitness, and
Mhm.
self mastery is a practice. It
Mhm.
takes time. You're not going to get this right every time. You're not going to get this right most of the time. Autopilot is almost always going to have you choosing the wrong thing, saying things too quickly, making mistakes, making assumptions, blaming, damaging relationships, increasing stress, reducing performance, reducing resilience, until we start to kick off that autopilot and do these things on repetition over and over and over again. They do not become our default operating system.
Mhm. Agree. We also have for you, friends, thank you, Eric. We have the curiosity script, and these are some questions that you can use to go beyond the surface because we talked about positions and aspirations. And the goal is to understand the positionality, but also what is the aspiration of the key stakeholders in this conflict? Because if we can get to the root of their aspirations, we might understand that there's actually some connection and some unity. And then listen for emotion, not necessarily logic. Curiosity is a connection. It's a connection in action. If we can be curious about the situation, we can learn and grow. And there's some questioning in here. We've also got for you a practice exercise. This is called the aspiration dig. And it's really about digging into the situation and doing our best to understand what it is. Anything you want to say about this, Eric?
Keep digging.
Keep searching. Yeah. Thank you, friends. Joy is always within your reach. It is your divine birthright. And we've got some choices if you want to dive deeper and grow your joy and understanding. We've got a joy mindset where you can take a quick survey and 5 questions, and it's going to tell you what mindset you're operating in, and you get some ideas for growing and moving into a joy mindset. We've also got a free chapter of Awaken Joy, which is great with relationship and developing that, and primarily your relationship with yourself and then your relationship with others. We've also got some courses that you can explore, and you can do a breakthrough session where you can work specifically with a joy success coach. And Eric, do you want to tell us a little bit about you and how they can connect with you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, which is beinghumanhealth.com. You can search me on Google. You'll find me there with mental fitness. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. I work with individuals, with groups, and with businesses and corporations in order to navigate life's challenges and to create performance, to increase relationships and resilience. And the last thing I'd like to say is just, if you guys aren't going to find a coach like either of us and not going to invest the time in, just try and remember to do things every day. We've talked about this every time we're on here, but I write on my wrist right there, and it is completely coincidental that it lines up with this particular workshop. But that says
Mm.
wrong, wrong. In each wrongness, there is an opportunity. Good
Mhm.
leaders take the accountability, they shoulder the burden, and they move forward, because being wrong provides an opportunity to update your software, to update your position, and to show people that you will take accountability. Opportunity shows that when things are hard and you're wrong, you're willing to say it and you're willing to learn. Those are the leaders that can lead themselves and that others want to follow.
Mhm.
And part of that is a big part of that is exploration.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for that summary. And thank you for sharing your reminder on your wrist. We appreciate that. That's another strategy. Friends, we appreciate you. Thank you for investing in yourself and growing in your knowledge, skills, strategies, and tools. We look forward to seeing you again. Remember, if you couldn't be live on this workshop, no worries. You can still register for it, get the free gift, and watch it at your leisure time. We have additional workshops. Go to joyoptions.org to see what those events are. And we look forward to staying in touch. Thank you for putting your questions in your Q&A and for adding comments to this workshop. You have a beautifully blessed day.